John and Michaela McAreavey were brand-spanking newlyweds who had jetted off to a tropical paradise on the eastern African island of Mauritius to celebrate their special day. After a beautiful wedding, they flew out on their honeymoon to start the rest of their life together in luxurious style. However, the celebrations and happiness would soon turn to tragedy as the beautiful bride was killed less than 2 weeks after tying the knot on the happiest day of her life. At face value, the expensive trip to Mauritius appeared like the perfect place to relax and unwind in the lap of luxury following their special day. Although for John and Michaela, it would prove to be where all their worst nightmares became reality. Michaela was born on New Year's Eve of 1983 and was 27 years old at the time she married John. Her father was very well known back at home in Ireland as a historically successful Gaelic football coach, very much a daddy's girl. Gaelic football provided the backbone of a very close and special bond with her dad, and it was inevitable that the sport was a key component in their family and a big part of their family life. Despite this relationship with her father and Gaelic football, Michaela wasn't a typical tomboy. In fact, she was conventionally feminine and beautiful, so much so that she successfully won a number of beauty pageants when she was in her 20s. Coupled with the fact that her father was a big deal in the country, this meant that she became something of a micro-celebrity and occasionally appeared on TV and in interviews. Michaela had been open and honest in public that due to her allegiances with her dad and the importance of football in her life, that any potential love interest would, in all reality, have to share a passion for the Gaelic sport. So it was no real surprise that the man she agreed to marry was the captain of his club, a respected Gaelic football player, and an accomplished accountant. For all intents and purposes, the couple seemed like a match made in heaven. And so on December 30th of 2010, just a day before her 27th birthday, John and Michaela were married at a beautiful ceremony in a small church in Tyrone, Northern Ireland. Friends and family described how they were madly in love with each other and shared an unbreakable bond. So off they flew to the island of Mauritius. They arrived at the Legends Hotel full of excitement and love. They had chosen that particular hotel because it had proved to be something of a popular hotspot amongst the Irish. It was a 5-star luxury resort overlooking the spectacular Indian Ocean and surrounded by rock pools, forests, beautiful beaches, and palm trees. It was everything a luxury honeymoon was supposed to be. On January 9th of 2011, security footage shows Michaela and John booking themselves into a couple of relaxing spa treatments. They were freshly married, enjoying their time together, and were intent on living the life of luxury and indulgence that they'd dreamed of when they booked the honeymoon. However, little could they have known that this special time together at the start of the rest of their life would only last another 24 hours before an unspeakable and devastating tragedy would unfold. The following day, on Monday, January 10th of 2011, in the morning, John had a golf lesson that was awarded as a part of the hotel package, while Michaela hung out and waited for him by the pool. They then went to one of the on-site restaurants for lunch before settling down for some afternoon tea to unwind. The newlyweds had received a box of luxury chocolates as part of their welcome package upon checking in. Michaela decided to pop back to the room to pick up the chocolates so they could enjoy them with their tea. Despite saying that she'd be right back, Michaela took longer than John expected, and as the minutes ticked by, he started to become concerned about her whereabouts. Given how close they were to their room, there was no reason why it should have taken so long. After waiting for more than 30 minutes, John started to feel like something must be wrong, and so he paid the bill at the restaurant and made his way back to the hotel room. Arriving back at the room, he realized that he'd left his key card by the swimming pool. Assuming that Michaela must be in the room, he knocked on the door for her to let him in. However, it appeared as though there was nobody actually in there. Despite the room being seemingly empty, John did think he could hear the faint sound of running water coming from inside. He was given a new card and escorted back to his room by a member of the hotel staff. But when he arrived back at the room, it immediately felt as though something wasn't right. He entered the room, only to find the running water noise to be increased upon his arrival. What he faced next is the stuff of nightmares, and the worst possible discovery he could possibly have been faced with. Michaela's lifeless body could be seen floating in the bathtub. It took officers over half an hour to arrive on the scene, and an additional 1 hour to cordon off the crime scene. In that time period, a number of significant mistakes were made that should never have happened. Dozens of people walked in and out of the hotel room, which was effectively a crime scene. Hotel staff, doctors, and even random guests that were passing by all entered the room at various times, subsequently contaminating and interfering with vital evidence. The most significant evidence was Michaela herself, and she was inexplicably moved from where she was in the bath out into the hall. John was initially considered to be a suspect, but was ultimately deemed not to have been involved. Within 24 hours of the discovery of Michaela's body, 3 hotel staff members had been arrested. The 3 staff members that were under investigation, Avinash Tribuhan, Sandeep Munya, and Raj Tikoy. All 3 were cleaners at the resort and had been using key cards to gain unlawful access to guests' apartments. After months of investigations and piecing together the evidence, the police believed they had a pretty good idea of what had happened. The keycard surveillance software used for the room keycards suggested that somebody had gained access to the room with a keycard used to enter via the front door. It's thought that whoever had broken into the property planned to steal whatever they could find in the room, and this was supported by a fingerprint on the door to where the room's safe was kept. It is believed that when Michaela then entered the room a couple of minutes later, the thief was startled by her unexpected return and attempted to hide in the bathroom, hoping that she wouldn't come in. Unfortunately for Michaela, she had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side of the bathroom door, and as she innocently entered the bathroom, she was attacked from behind by the intruding thief, who seemingly panicked at the whole situation. What started as a petty theft had taken a dramatic turn for the worse, and he then proceeded to strangle the beautiful 27-year-old. After he'd killed her, it's thought he then placed her in the bathtub and ran the water in an attempt to make it appear as though she had drowned. After this, the same keycard records show that the next entry into the room was when Mark returned from reception with the new card. A week after the heartbreaking murder, another 2 suspects were arrested. These were 26-year-old Dasan Narayanan and 39-year-old Sonarani Mangu. The case against Dasan was a complicated one that would ultimately be hard to validate. As a security guard in the hotel, it was his fingerprint that was found on the door of the safe inside the room. However, there was also witness evidence that proved Dasan was seen inside the room helping with the fallout of the horror that unfolded as people tried to figure out what had happened and what was going on. It stands to reason that hotel security would be in and around the scene afterward, and so the inevitable DNA evidence that was linked to him was no longer sufficient to pin him specifically to the crime. This, of course, ties into the problem with the failure to seal off the crime scene after Michaela was found. Sonarana Mangu was also a security guard who investigators initially thought was involved. It was believed that these 2 suspects, along with the original 3 that were arrested, were part of an organized theft ring at the hotel. They worked together to gain access to guests' rooms, steal any belongings, and then split the profits between the 5 of them. However, there was insufficient evidence for the investigators, and they subsequently had to drop any murder charges against Dasan and Sonarain. The cleaner Raj Tikoy was also cleared of the charges, but under one condition. He would have to testify against his cleaning colleagues Avinash and his supervisor Sandeep. The investigation and prosecution ended up being a long, drawn-out affair. The 2 remaining suspects, Avinash and Sandeep, waited 16 months before the trial for the murder of Michaela McAreavey to begin. The primary investigating team came under significant criticism for its handling of the case. Although Avinash did originally confess to the murder of the freshly married Michaela, the confession only came after allegedly being beaten into confessing by officers for 3 long days. Forensic DNA evaluations concluded that no physical DNA traces of 4 of the 5 suspects were ever found on the body of Michaela or at the crime scene. The single exclusion, of course, was Dasan, whose fingerprint DNA was confirmed on the door of the safe in the apartment, but was later discounted as incriminating as he had been in the room supporting John in the immediate aftermath of the fatal incident. Without conclusive and definitive DNA evidence, it was impossible to find anyone guilty of murder. A security camera clip that had somewhat conveniently been leaked to the press just a day before the trial showed John and Michaela arguing intensely at the hotel resort reception, planting the seed, of course, for a domestic dispute, and once again putting John back in the frame for what would occur. If the clip was confirmed as being footage of John and Michaela, then the entire case would have been up in smoke. However, the timing of the clip was 15 minutes after Michaela had already been tragically murdered, so there's no way it could have been them. It happened to be a cleverly placed piece of evidence put together by the defense team. It turned out that the clip in question was actually of two German guests stopping at the resort, so the judge threw the evidence out and asked it be discounted from the case. The defense angle continued to heavily lean into the theory that it was John who had murdered his own wife, but the reality of it was that this thread never made any sense right from the get-go. A number of witnesses, in addition to security camera footage, had John's whereabouts accounted for at all times. You can only imagine how difficult it must have been to not only experience the horrific murder of your brand new wife on your honeymoon, but then to be callously accused of being the one to kill her yourself. Not just privately, but in the media, in public, and in the courtroom. That has to be tough to take. But it wasn't just John who was targeted by the defense team. Even Michaela was scrutinized herself, with the defense suggesting that maybe the killing came as a result of a sexual fantasy with a stranger that went wrong. This of a murdered woman on her honeymoon. As agreed previously, in order to gain full immunity, Raj Tikoi took to the stand as instructed. In his statement, he said that he had seen the cleaning trolley of Avinash outside the apartment and heard screams of pain coming from Michaela's room. He then witnessed Avinash and Sandeep come out of the room shortly after, looking rather concerned and nervous. After confronting them, they threatened to kill him if he ever said anything to anyone. There was a lot riding on the case for the entire island of Mauritius, which so heavily relies on its tourism trade. Obviously, having a killer on the loose around its hotel resorts is hardly going to be great for business, so the defense went strongly on the suggestion of the heavily flawed investigation and the historically corrupt police force. They suggested that they had selected two poor local workers and sacrificed them as scapegoats in order to rid the country of an unsolved murder issue. Having failed to secure the crime scene after the murder, as well as being unable to collect any DNA evidence from the scene, there was very little for the prosecution to confidently claim. The most concrete confession had come from Avinash, but it's suspected that the confession was beaten out of him in a police force where this is historically known to have happened regularly. After what was hoped would be a short, swift trial, it took the jury a full 2 months to reach a verdict. In the end, they concluded that Avinash and Sandeep were not guilty of the murder of Michaela McAreavey. Inevitably, this was a devastating blow to John and Michaela's family, who were desperately seeking justice. John declared he would continue to fight forever to get justice for his beautiful bride. But despite being reopened on multiple occasions, we still have no definitive conclusion to this terribly sad case more than 10 years later. What was supposed to be the start of a remarkable life together turned into a honeymoon of nightmares that continues to haunt John to this very day.